Okay, so I'm redoing my Cobra video playlist because we've made some adjustments. We've been selling the Cobra now for almost 2 years, and we've made some changes based on how we ship and build and that sort of thing. So if you've gotten past Cobras, you're probably, or at least we hope you're happy and moving along nicely and everything's good to go. And if you're a new customer, then this is what you should expect to find, and a walkthrough on how to assemble everything. First and foremost, I'm going to go over these. So when you unpack your kit, you should have a series of Ziploc bags that are labeled with the contents. The accessory bag has zip ties and heat shrink, 3D printed parts, battery straps, Velcro, adhesive pads, and voltage tester. Then you have 6mm bolts. These are all going to be M3, but the 17 count is for the top and the bottom standoffs, or to go into the top and the bottoms. You've got your standoffs here, 30mm, M3. You have your 12mm bolts. You've got your silver and black nylock nuts. And then these are your nylon standoffs, nylon nuts, and then also some other standoffs and nuts that come with the flight controller. So this is what you will see. Now, as you see here laid out in front of me, I've already unboxed everything and I've already got it somewhat laid out. This is the toolkit that you will get with your kit. Here are my props. This is the frame here. Here are the screws for the top and bottom of the standoffs. These are the screws that I mentioned. Actually, I need to add these over here as well. So those are these, and these come over here. Trying to group them accordingly as you will use them. We'll put those kind of along here as well. These are the 12s. These are the 6s. These are your motor screws here, your motors, the electronics here. 3D printed parts are here. This would be for your GPS. This is going to be for your camera, and then this is going to be for your flight controller. When you unpack them, you will notice that these little rubber grommets are actually part of the 3D print, and you're just going to clip them off. But I'll go into that in greater detail here in a little bit. So as you can see, this is everything you're going to need. So I'm going to just jump right into the assembly. This is going to be your bottommost plate, front and back. I'm just going to go like that. I'm going to take my 12mm screws and drop them in here like this. And then I'm just going to flip it over like that. And I'm going to take my arms and just start to get them into place. And then I'm going to take this plate and just put it right into place like that. And I'm going to take the black nylock nuts. They have a little rubber grommet on the inside that helps it lock into place really nicely. I'm not going to crank anything down until I get the assembly the majority of the way done, at least on the steps here. Okay, so now still kind of floppy, still kind of loose. Alright, so we use a 30 by 30. So I'm going to drop this into here. I'm going to use the silver nut like that. Like that. The outer is 30 by 30. The inner is 20 by 20 for a different type of flight controller. So I'm going to move to my next one. Do the same thing. I'm just going to go through adding each one. Use the silver nut to get it into place. Okay. Now that you have it all in position and in place, now you can go ahead and crank it down. So you're going to use your 5.5 box, and then you're going to use your 2.5 millimeter Allen. You're just going to sit here and crank it in. Okay, now everything's nice and snug. So now we can go ahead and start working on mounting our electronics. This is where you're going to take those nylon standoffs. You're just going to put it right onto here, like that. You can use this to snug them down if you want to. Just remember that it is nylon and they can strip out, so you don't have to go too terribly hard on it. Okay, now we can start working on getting our electronics put into place. So we will take our 4-in-1 ESC and drop him in right there. Then we're going to take these metal, they're called gnarled aluminum standoffs, and we're going to put those onto these like this. Now it might be challenging to thread them on. There's a rubber grommet right there, and all you really have to do is just press and turn till it bites. And you can give it a little more turn, 1 or 2 more turns, and you're good to go. Again, we're not trying to crank it down, we're just trying to make sure it's nice and snug. Like that. Okay, so now we have those in place. This is a new addition. So this is a shield to protect the barometer. You're not going to be able to see it, but on the bottom of your flight controller is a teeny tiny little chip with a hole in it, and that is the barometer. And that measures the barometric pressure, and that helps it figure out altitude, figures out where it's at. And so it is sensitive to both light and wind. So we want to shield it from any of that so that it doesn't hinder its ability to do what we want it to do. So you will notice, let's see, is it this way? Looks like it's that way. This little shield only fits on one way. It won't fit any other way. So we want to make sure that we get the right orientation when we go to put it on our flight controller, or when we go to put it on our drone. So there that is. Now this guy is just going to flop over on top of it. I'm going to put that right there. Now these you should have clipped off of your 3D printed barometer shield. You'll notice, hopefully this video shows it, but there's a little change in elevation, or I'm not sure the best way to explain it, but basically it goes down on top of this post like that. So I'm just going to go through and push them onto the screw here like that. And you'll notice, it might not expose a bunch of threads. If the threads don't expose very well, you can always use your needle nose that are in your toolkit to kind of press these down a little bit, just so that it makes it easier for the nut to bite on it. So I'm just going to kind of go through and push down on each one of those like that. Now you'll notice I have 4 of these and I have 4 of these. The reason that is because sometimes these can be very challenging to thread on to the post. So I've also included these in case you struggle with getting these attached. So you'll use either those or those. You will not use both. I think these are pretty, so I go with the pretty ones because I want to look cool and all of that. And then, like I said, you just kind of get it on there and thread it on just like that. Let's see how successful I am on the next one, because I'm not gonna lie, these can be challenging. And it's just got to be snug. It doesn't have to be rock solid. You don't have to crank it down. Sometimes it's easier to kind of turn as you press. Yeah, see, now it's biting. Just like that. And you're just going through and snugging it down. Okay, so there you go. Now we can start adding our standoffs. I'm not going to do all of them, not all at once anyway. I'm going to do most of them. So let's get our 6mm screws. I'm going to start at the back. And I'm going to do these 2 right here. The 2 I am going to hold off on are going to be the 2 that I get the camera ready for. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to slide it right on there like that. Okay. And then this is your GPS. And notice it has an arrow on it. So that arrow needs to be facing forward just like this arrow is on this flight controller. So we also have a little bit of slack here, and we don't want any of these wires getting caught up into the propellers. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a little bit of wire management here, or cable management. We'll see. Because obviously we need it to be, so maybe not that way. Let's do this then. Let's go ahead and put it through here, like that. Plug it back in. 5 volts. These are where it's going here. Just like that. And then you're just going to press it up in just like that. And that is your GPS. So now, as I mentioned, I'm actually going to set this aside for a minute, and I'm going to bring my camera over here with my last 2 standoffs, the teeny tiny screws and the last part of the printed items. You're going to use your 1.5mm Allen, and you're going to thread them into here like this. And then lastly, just because I think it's a little bit easier to do it outside of the drone. I'm going to put my standoffs on here right now because I find it easier to press on them when they're not in it. So there's one. And there's the other one. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here, come back to this. This is the connector for my camera. Teeny tiny pins, teeny tiny connector. Be careful not to bend pins. That is the fastest way to disable your drone, is to bend some pins when you're plugging something in. And then you're really bummed. The other thing I want to point out is notice how I have the camera behind these standoffs. Whenever possible, you want to try and protect your components within the body of the drone. So I'm actually putting my camera inside rather than out in front. That way, eliminating potential chances of damage and destruction of my drone or of my camera. So now, I'm going to put these last two standoffs in place. And kind of come down with it a little bit if you can. That's what I think. Sometimes it's easier out when it's not there yet, but either way, that's good right there. Your camera is not going to be perfectly straight. When you fly, you pitch forward, so you actually want a little bit of an angle on your camera. Okay, so now we have our component, our ESC on the bottom, our flight controller on the top, our receiver, our GPS, and our camera. So now we can add motors. It doesn't matter which motor goes where. The thing that you will notice is that the nuts on the motors are reverse threaded. We ordered ours from China, and one of those things you take for granted. You know, you assume everybody does it the same way, and here we are, we wound up with a whole bunch of motors that were reverse threaded. So until we can change that, we're letting everybody know the nut on your motors, right is loose, left is tight, which for us Americans is a little bit different. You can go ahead and plug these up if you want to, just to kind of keep them out of your way or keep them from flopping around. You may wind up changing these, so there's no need to zip tie them into place or anything like that as of yet. You might, I don't know how good this video is going to look, but you might notice some of these things have been used. So basically I've torn down one of our existing test drones so that I can then build it back up for the video. Yours will be nice and shiny and new. There will be I think 2 or 3 different lengths of screws in your motor, in each one of your motor boxes. The motors come with the screws, and I think you're using the long one. That is something you'll want to pay attention to when you assemble these, is that you're using the correct length. If you go too long, you have the potential of hitting the windings in the motor and ruining your motor. So make sure you pay attention to the length of screw that you're using when attaching your motors. And again, I'm just connecting these purely and simply to keep them out of the way. Okay, so now we have it almost completely assembled. It didn't take long, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and get our top plate. Okay. All right, notice I have not done my battery strap yet. That's not a big deal. We can do that right now. It's going to go in these slots here. And it's going to come around like that. So you're going to stick it in here like this. Use your little needle nose, or not needle nose, your tweezers that come in your toolkit. Okay. So the other thing that we have learned in our travels, since we have a bottom mounted battery, some of the guys were actually damaging their batteries. So we came up with this handy dandy little battery protector. So it just kind of goes like this. And then whenever you get your battery ready, it'll go like that. And that will protect your battery. Now what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and add our LEDs. You should have gotten some adhesive strips, some adhesive pads that you will cut into little sections in each one of these spots so that you can add your LEDs. Alright, so I've got my handy dandy little adhesive pads. I'm just going to cut it. We try to stay consistent on what we supply. These adhesive pads are a little on the thick side. We might, over time, have thinner pads. But we will always supply some form of sticky so that you can add these items on. So now, one final thing. You should get glue. What you're going to want to do with this is you're going to want to run a bead around the edge of this GPS. In our testing, in our prototype testing, we found that in a really strong crash, this could actually eject and get lost. So we started adding glue so that you could run, like I said, just run it along that side, maybe that side. You might want to avoid this connector so that you don't get it all gummed up, but you definitely want to get some glue around the sides of it so that it does not get lost in a crash. So with that, you should be ready to check rotation. Now you're going to plug your battery in. And actually there's still a few things that are not connected. We can go ahead and connect to these. Same thing as before, teeny tiny pins, teeny tiny connectors. I'd hate for somebody to not have the coolness of lights. So pay special attention when you're plugging these in, that you do not get them bent. And we'll go ahead and hit this one over here. I'm going to come back and actually make this nice, neat, and tidy once we finish the computer side, which really and truly there isn't much on the computer side unless you want to make changes. Because you can plug a battery in now and arm it, and you'll be able to determine which way the motors are spinning. Once you know which way the motors are spinning, then you can know whether or not you need to swap any wires. So if he's spinning clockwise and I want him to spin counterclockwise, all I need to do is change 2 wires. It doesn't matter which 2. All you got to do is go there and swap them like that. And that will change the rotation, the direction of rotation. So that's where we're at right now. We need to determine which way these are spinning.